What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla's SPY in the overall markets. I'm also going to break down what's going on with the economic calendar moving forward, Tesla's earnings and other earnings that just came out, which you should be watching for in the charts as time goes on. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amount of money, you're guaranteed to 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. Deposit $2,000 or more and you're guaranteed 40. The offer ends very soon in just about 8 days. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with Tesla. So one thing worth mentioning about Tesla is the fact that we're seeing some buyers trying to hold us above this 217 area. If that fails us, the imbalance takes us down towards 215. We also have this resistance closer to the 220 zone, so overall we're still stuck within a range. But Tesla's going to be making a very, very big move once we get our earnings, and earnings is going to be after the market closes for today. So it's not too far from now. It's less than 12 hours from now, guys. Tesla will be announcing their earnings. It's going to be very, very big, so I can't wait to see what they end up announcing. So the question is, what's going to happen for today and what's happening with Tesla? As a reminder, there's not really much data coming out for today. It's Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. We have some existing home sales coming out at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but it's very minor. And besides that, we just have a couple of Fed speakers like barking, but everything is quite minor in my opinion. On top of this, when it comes to other pieces of news, just know that Tesla is basically announcing their earnings after market close. So is IBM. Before market open, we just got AT&T, Boeing, and Coca-Cola announcing their earnings. But once again, after market close, we have Tesla and the others. As far as Tesla's news goes, before I talk about the other earnings, just know this. There's been some talk about how Palo Alto is exploring the robotaxi deal with Tesla. And Palo Alto is a region, it's a city that's once again very close to San Francisco. And this is where tech is absolutely massive. This is Silicon Valley. So that's going to be huge news, at least for Tesla, if they do develop a robotaxi around there. So that could be very, very cool stuff with them exploring the area, using that as a particular base. And I think it's very, very cool with the energy, the engineers, and et cetera that live around the area. Very, very useful stuff, in my personal opinion, for Tesla. I think that this is some big news. They're also working with discussions with Tesla to potentially form a partnership, which I think is very, very cool stuff. So, very interesting stuff for Tesla, very bullish for the long term. On top of this, there's been a lot of talk about their Q3 earnings. Tesla's going to give us a lot of insights about what we're looking for when it comes to AI and robotics. But the question is, can they give investors that the wow factor that's going to cause upside for the share price? Are we about to get that, or is it going to be another one of those like long-term bullish events where the short term just has some concerns about their margins, about their sales, and all these other factors? If it's one of those events, guys, you want to be very, very careful and very mindful of that. So we'll see how things end up going for Tesla, but I'm still very, very excited. We're expected to report a revenue of about $25.4 billion. That's higher than what was expected before, 25.05 billion. And then EPS, we're expecting around a 0.51 or a 51 cent EPS. That's the adjusted EPS with net income at 2.06 billion. So we'll see what happens with those margins. We'll see what happens with their sales and what they expect for Q4. Guidance is going to be very key. So get ready for all of that. For other earnings, Coca-Cola did relatively well, but their demand was quite sluggish. So they beat on EPS with 77 cents adjusted. Revenues beat at almost 12 billion, but their demand has been a little bit more sluggish, which is why they saw some prices going up. The unit cast volume fell 1% in the quarter. So that's once again driven by weakening demand. That's part of why the share price is not as up right now. It's actually a little bit down because of that. So that's something very important. AT&T had some good growth overall. We actually saw revenue at about $30.21 billion, down a little bit year over year, but still very, very close to what estimates are showing us. EPS was decent, so very, very mixed earnings, but not too bad, at least from AT&T. As far as Boeing went, Boeing also announced their earnings, and things were okay for them. Some things were okay, other things not as great. They are talking about tighter spending and things like that as time goes on. Revenue was aligned with expectations, but once again, their loss per share was at $10.44. That is, once again, not as bad as expected. So earnings, some things were a little bit better, but they did talk about how more than 32,000 machinists are on strikes. Not the best of news. For other pieces of news, just real quick, the market's dipping at least to start things off because of, once again, yields, not to mention some fears that were developing. So just like what happened yesterday, the same thing is happening this morning, but we'll see if the market gets bought back up at particular levels. Besides that, there's not really anything else too crazy on the news that I haven't gone over already. So now let's just focus on the charts. All right. So Tesla is just remaining range bound for the time being. I think it's possible we try to push back up to 218. If that breaks, we go back up to about 220, then come back down. But I think for the most part, Tesla's going to consolidate between 215 and 220. So look for a little bit of a pop and then maybe a dip back down. But lots of sideways price action for now between 215 and 220. Now, we could be making a much bigger move later on once we get earnings. But for now, look for a little bit of a pop once we open to fill this gap and a lot of sideways price action. We're going to see some more volatility once we get earnings. For SPY, we're dipping a little bit. We're looking at 582 as our main resistance. I did say yesterday we're going to start off with the dip in the morning. My call out has happened so far. So we're looking at 580 as our support, very close to 579.5 to 580. If that fails us, we're looking for basically a target of about the 578 range. So watch those supports. I think SPY will be dipping closer to 580, and we'll see if we get a bounce off that or not, or if we bounce closer to 578. As long as we close above our 50 EMA, we're going to be okay. So just be a little bit careful with the way SPY is forming. There is a head and shoulders like structure that is developing. So for now, look for a small dip towards 580, if not a little bit lower, if that does not hold. And then we'll see if we get a bounce later on. But for now, just be prepared, for some downside. ES has a head and shoulders like structure as well right over here. If we don't hold above 58.74, there is a risk of us coming back down to these lows around the 58.60 area. If we reclaim 58.80, we're going to be looking for a push. But for now, look for some potential downside, and we'll see how things end up going. For Nvda, Nvidia is flat right now, but there is a risk of us getting closer to about 140. Watch 142 support, if not 140, and we'll see if we bounce off that previous resistance becoming support or not. So look for a small dip on Nvidia. For Bitcoin, this is starting to dip as well, losing its 50 EMA. We got to reclaim 67,000, excuse me. If not, we're looking for 66,250 as our support. If that fails us, we're dipping back down to 65,500. For other factors out there, we have NQ. NQ is dipping. We're looking for 20,428 as our support. If that fails us, we're dipping to 20,200. So look for a small dip on NQ and see if we bounce. For the QQQ, we're also dipping. We're looking for basically 494 as our support. If that fails us, we're dipping back down to 492, very close to our 50 EMA. So look for a small dip there. And we'll see if we rebound or not. But watch and see how things end up going. For Apple's dipping as well. We're not holding 234, so we have to try to reclaim 234 to turn back up. If not, there's a risk of us coming down to 232. My gut tells me it might be dipping a little bit closer to where this low is before it attempts to rebound, possibly. But look for some more downside before anything else. Netflix is slowing right now. I did mention yesterday we could be dipping lower towards where this wick is. So look for an attempt to get down to 760, if not below, closer to 756 for some downside, and we'll see if it bounces or not. The IWM Russell 2000 is dipping. We're barely holding 220. We have to hold this to try to rebound to 222. If 220 fails us, we're looking for a dip back down to 219 and eventually 217.8 at the 200 EMA. My gut tells me there's more downside potential for 219 and 217, so give this the time it needs. For Coinbase, we have basically 207 as our resistance, and we have this main support down here around this 200 area. So I think we could be dipping closer to 200 for a small dip on the 4-hour time frame. So give this the time it needs. For Amazon's also in a very, very interesting phase right now. We're trying to hold our 20 EMA. As long as we don't lose 188, we could be actually pushing for 190 and outperforming the market. So it might kind of pop for 190, then it could dip a little bit later on. So just be mindful of that. Meta has been attempting to push up, once again, trying to break out of this wedge right over here. But we're going to be looking for this resistance around this 583 to 585 area. If it slows us down, we could be returning to 579 or below. So watch and see if we break 585 to turn bullish. If we can't break 585, we might be tipping back down to 579 or below. Microsoft is trying to push for 430 as we predicted yesterday, but I said to be careful. With the market slowing, this could slow things down for Microsoft as well. So look for a little bit of a push to 431, and we'll see if we start dipping back down to about 425. For Google, we're looking a little bit more bullish. We could attempt to get closer to about 167 to 168 before it starts slowing back down to 165. So be very mindful of that. Anyways, that's a quick update on the markets. Expect some downside as the market starts off, and then we'll see if we get a bounce later on during the day. As far as Tesla goes, we're going to likely consolidate in a range, and the real move does not matter. Right now, the move does not matter until we get into earnings, so give it the time it needs. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day, and peace out.